From beating Georgia one day to losing to Vandy the next, you cannot make this up. Kalen DeBoer has had his best win as the Alabama coach to his worst win in the span of 2 weeks. This is without a doubt one of the worst losses in Alabama history, if it is not the worst loss in Alabama history. So who do you look at? Who is to blame? Where do you go from here? Is it all over for Alabama? The answer to that last question is no, it's not all over, but as surprising as this loss is, the Alabama defensive struggles should not be as much of a surprise. All season long, Alabama has accepted things in their wins that they would never accept in a loss. Shout out to Shannon Sharp. But this defense in the last 2 games have allowed 74 points and 937 yards of offense. The young corners continue to get beat. There is no penetration most of the times with the defensive line, and to make it worse, there seem to be no adjustments made since the season started, and that starts with coaching. Firstly, looking at Coach KD, but mainly Kane Womack and his horrible scheme that he refuses to change. We're going to talk about what went wrong for this Alabama team, the details in the game, the biggest reasons why they lost, as well as the outlook for this team as we're going to look forward into the rest of the season. But before we do that, let's give a big shout out to Vandy. They whooped Alabama from start to finish. The first possession, they ran the ball straight down their throats. Alabama was cooked from the start. The motion, the RPO game was too much for this defense to handle. Alabama could not make a tackle. They were out hustled, outmanned. They deserved to lose. And as a fan, I was initially hurt at this loss, but I'm glad they lost. Let me tell you why. Unlike other fans, I would not be sad. Listen to what I'm saying. I would not be sad if Alabama lost every single game the rest of the way. If this single thing is not addressed, and I'm serious about this, and this is why, because there is something that happened after this game that is even more shameful than this loss, in my honest opinion. I know this loss will go down in history, and what I'm going to tell you guys is not going to be remembered at all. But what I'm about to talk about in this small rant is something that will trickle down into season upon season to come if it is not addressed behind the scenes. I hope that it is, so I can get off this soapbox, but I'm going to tell you why I said this. The most shameful thing that I saw was what Malachi Moore did at the end of this game. You usually see this from guys who are younger, who are more emotional, but not from a guy who was supposed to be your leader on that defense. Now, Malachi Moore, come on, man, you gotta know better than that. You can only be mad at yourself. Didn't you give up a bomb for a touchdown? That's on you. I'm all for passion. I believe in having love for the game. I believe in showing that you actually care. But after getting whooped by Vandy, the only person you can blame is yourself. There's no need to act like that. And you might say, look, it's not that big of a deal. No, it is that big of a deal, because things like this trickle down into the locker room and creates a horrible culture. We have a team that is very young. A lot of those kids are very impressionable, and so you see the leader on your defense doing that. What do you think those young guys are going to do when things get tough, when things get hard? They're going to act just like that. And that's just not talking about this season. I'm looking at the bigger picture. I wouldn't be mad if he sat the next game. I just think it's that serious, and I don't care if Alabama wins or loses because he isn't in. Sometimes you have to be held accountable for what you're doing on the field. Will I be rooting for Alabama to lose? No, hell no. I never root against Alabama. I'll always be a fan, win or lose. But with that attitude, I believe that creates a horrible culture, a culture of losing. But that's just me. You may disagree with what I just said, but now that I'm off of that soapbox, I'm going to continue and talk about the rest of this game. Starting with Vandy's QB, Diego Pavia, who led his team to his first win over the #1 team in the country in school history. 16 of 20, 252 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. He made play after play, along with Eli Stowers, who had 6 receptions for 113 yards. Every time a play needed to be made, it seemed like one of them made that play. And I can't forget about Cedric Alexander, 21 carries, 64 yards, so not a lot of yards, but he had 2 TD. And I'm going to get into Alabama's defense later in the video because that's the main reason for the loss, but let's talk about the offense first. Jalen Milroe, 310 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Had an okay game, good enough to win that game. The offense put up 40. Ryan Williams showed up with great play after great play. Jeremy Bernard showed up with great plays. But what was missing? Something that I've talked about time and time again, the running game. And if I'm a running back in that room, I'm really thinking hard about my future on this offense. We have two of the best running backs in the country who are being underutilized each and every week. Not just this week. I've been on this soapbox week after week after week. The thing about the running game is you have to commit to it in order to make it work. That's just my personal opinion. With the backs that we have in that locker room, I think they are good enough to where we can have drives where we hand the ball off again and again and again. How often this year have we seen Alabama run the ball and then run the ball again? Alabama offense is very explosive, yes, but when that big playability is gone, the offense looks lackluster. And I think most of that is because of the lack of commitment to the running game. Secondly, Jalen Milroe did have 2 turnovers in this game, a pop-up interception and a fumble after the lineman got beat off the edge. Unfortunately, those are the type of plays that get you beat. And as the quarterback of the team, it's still going to fall on you at the end of the day. You can't get beat off the edge if you're that lineman, but at the same time as Jalen Milroe, you have to hold on to the ball as well. So with that being said, though, I want to say this about Vandy. They were hungrier in this game. They wanted to win more, and you can tell throughout the entirety of this game. And with that, let's talk about this defense. They could not get off the field on third down. Vandy was 12 of 18 on third down. 75 total plays on Vandy's side to Alabama's 45 plays. But the biggest stat of this is the time of possession. 17 minutes for Alabama to 42 minutes for Vandy. It didn't matter if it was third and short, if it was third and long, if it was third and to Tuscaloosa. Bama's defense could not get off the field. Forced no turnovers. Vandy had a very clean game. Alabama's defense could not tackle. Vandy was carrying guys on their back. Just bad all the way around. Vandy scored the most points against Alabama since 1906 when it was a 78-0 blowout. Vandy has not scored over 20 points against Alabama since 1996. 0-60 against top 5 teams. Had not beat Alabama since 1984. And you know what's even crazier than that? Since Saban had been there in 2007, Alabama has played Vandy 4 times. Vandy has scored a total of 13 points in all 4 of those matchups. 55-3, 59-0, 34-0, and 24-10. They scored 13 points in the first quarter against Kalen DeBoer and Kane Wommack. Kalen DeBoer is an offensive guy, so I'm not looking at him as hard as I am the defense. The offense was able to get 40 points in this game. And if the defense had been playing well, they probably would have scored 60. So who has to be held accountable for this? Kane Wommack? We're looking at you. The defense you brought in has done nothing but give up plays, and Georgia has shown the country the recipe to beat this team. Vandy studied that, and coming off of their bye week was able to replicate that in this game. But it really wasn't that big of a secret. It was just who was the team that was going to exploit it first. Georgia did that in the second half. It was just a little bit too late. South Florida was able to do it a little bit. The difference is in this game and the South Florida game is the fact that South Florida was not able to get into the end zone. And if you look at that South Florida game, this defense was doing the same thing then. They just was able to stop them in the red zone. Vandy was able to get into the end zone, unlike South Florida. It's basically the same thing. And the difference between this and the Georgia game is the turnover margin. Carson Beck turned the ball over way too much and gave Alabama a lot more chances. That offense was hitting great. The thing about the Alabama offense is, like I said earlier, they can make big plays, but you saw the offense get shut down. The big plays were taken away. The running game was not being used, and Georgia was able to come back. And so we saw in this game, everything that is wrong with this Alabama team showed itself at the worst time. But with all of that being said, where does Alabama go from here? Well, firstly, I hope they change this horrible defensive scheme. If not, Kane Wommack, you can go today and you can let somebody else be the defense coordinator. We can scrap that whole defense and start from zero because that was horrible. But I still believe in Coach KD. I'm not on that train. I believe he is the right guy for Alabama, and I'll stand on that. But Kane, if this continues throughout the season, you got to go. Some people hate Coach KD's demeanor, especially after this game. They hate that he's not more riled up. But let me tell you guys something, and I believe that we have to come to this conclusion. If you haven't already came to that conclusion, I think after this game you will. After the Georgia game, a lot of people were fooled. Listen, Coach KD is not and never will be Nick Saban. He is a calm guy. That's his demeanor, and I'm fine with that. A lot of offensive-minded head coaches are somewhat of that. cool, calm, and collective demeanor. But at the same time, I think Alabama needs a more gritty, hard-nosed defense coordinator next year if things don't change. Looking at the rest of the season, Tennessee and Missouri lost, so that makes the Crimson Tide strength of schedule look even worse. LSU is still on there, so that's good. They're kind of hanging on. Can Oklahoma beat Texas? That will make things very interesting. I hope so for our sake, but I still think Alabama can run the table here if they don't give up 40 plus points. But I'm not sure if they can do that because they have not earned the benefit of the doubt there until proven otherwise. At the end of the day, though, it's still Roll Tide. I'm still going to root for Bama, but they have to clean some things up, and I'm still disappointed in Malachi more than anything. You may disagree, but that's my take on it.